Thanks, Laurie. So it's a great pleasure to have Anne Schreiter with us today. She is the Executive Director of the German Scholars Organization, an independent non-profit in Berlin, where she's joining us from today, that advises, connects, promotes, and funds researchers who want to build a career in Germany. She studied social and business communications and sociology in Berlin and Chinese language in Nanjing, China. After receiving her PhD in Organizational Sociology from the University of St. Gallen, she spent a year as a postdoc at Berkeley, and 7 years ago, she transitioned from academia to the nonprofit sector, and today she's gonna help us discover what we're good at and how we can use that to take our careers forward. So I'll pass over to you, Anne.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Esther, and welcome everybody. I'm glad I can be here with you today, joining from dark Berlin. Yeah, Esther already introduced me very well. I'm a sociologist by training, and when I was doing my postdoc and before that my PhD, I encountered a lot of the questions that we will talk about today as well. So what am I good at? What are my skills? You know, what can I do if I don't necessarily want to pursue a career in academia? And, you know, how can I decide if I want to stay in academia or do something else? So those were really tough questions. And I will introduce to you a few little tricks. We don't have much time, and it's just like one little piece of a puzzle, but I think it will help you to get started and to think about what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. And before we start and go into the details, I would like to learn a little bit about you, just very briefly. And Laurie was so kind to prepare a small survey. So I know a lot of you are probably STEM people, but maybe we do also have maybe life sciences or humanities here. And I would like to ask you if you like to join this little survey, telling me what field are you currently in and what your current career plan is. That would be just interesting to know. Just give you a few seconds to answer. Oh yeah, we do have some social sciences and humanities people here. Okay, very good. Perfect, just a few more seconds. Almost everybody has answered. Wonderful, I think that gives us a good overview. I'll share it with you. I think you should see it now. So yeah, most of yours are STEM people. Yeah, quite a big share. The majority wants to transition to industry or the business sector, but also quite a few people want to stay in academia. So what we're doing right now, it is relevant for whatever career path you're interested in, you know. So it works for both. Yeah, thanks for answering. And then there is another question also regarding the topic. So when you think about your strengths or your skills, could you tell me right away what your 3 greatest strengths are? You don't have to tell me, just figure out, could you tell me immediately what those 3 are? Okay, interesting, interesting. Few more seconds. Okay, so that's not too bad actually. So yeah, but you have to think about it. That's what we're doing today as well. But 7 people also don't really know, and that is actually not very uncommon, especially for people in academia, because that's just often the nature of academia, that you don't really think about your strengths so much. You just do a lot of stuff. But we will figure that out. So thank you very much for answering openly. if you have questions during my little presentation, we will have like, you know, some Q&A in between. But if you have questions, just write it in the chat. I will check once in a while. If it's like something super urgent, just raise your hand. Makes it easier for me to see. Sometimes, you know, monitoring the chat all the time is a little bit tricky. But I think we can manage. I will share my screen. You're invited to leave your camera on or turn it off. I know, you know, when I share my screen, you probably see the screen anyways and no one else. So feel free, whatever you feel best with. Okay, so we'll talk about transferable skills and strengths. Esther already introduced me. If you like, you can connect with me or the GSO on LinkedIn, Twitter, email or web. Also on our website, gsonet.org, we do have a few resources, free career resources in German, but also in English. And again, we're called the German Scholars Organization, but we don't focus necessarily on Germans, but we have a focus on the German job market. But whatever I will tell you about today and, you know, the common, you know, challenges of academics, they're universal. So don't be sort of confused by that German part of it. So within the next roughly 60 minutes, what will we do? I would like to share 3 pieces of advice that really helped me in my career transition. And I will talk a little bit about the overall idea of a career strategy, because what we're doing today is like one part of that, but I would like you to sort of see the whole thing. We will focus on self-reflection because, you know, your transferable skills and strengths, you have to sort of introspect a little bit and get inspiration. But we will talk about skills, strengths, but also values. It's not directly connected, but I think knowing your values and what kind of work environment you enjoy, what's important to you, I think that's also important when you think about, you know, your skills and your strengths and what your next career step could be. We will just briefly touch on job opportunities and you know, how you can make use of your skills. And then I'll share some resources and we have a Q&A. Okay, let's jump in right away with those 3 pieces of advice that also really helped me. Number 1, don't skip self-reflection. You often think about, you know, thinking about what I want or what I'm good at. Maybe that's like esoteric stuff. No, it's not. It's basically just important that you know what you want and what's important to you so you can communicate it to others and get what you want. And what's also important is doing this kind of self-reflection is know what value a career in academia has for you, because it is a tough career choice. It's a very rewarding career choice as well, but you should make an informed choice. And that means knowing what you're getting yourself into and also what kind of other options you would have outside of academia. So you can really make an informed choice. Number 2, also know that academia statistically is the alternative career path, not the other way around, because more PhDs work outside of academia than, you know, work inside academia. And number 3, career planning is no rocket science, but you have to start. So often, you know, you're all super busy if you're doing your PhD or a postdoc or whatever. You have a lot on your plate, but career planning should also be part of your job, because usually, you know, you have limited contracts and stuff. So figuring out what your next step is should also be part of your job. That's only fair. And see it a little bit as a research project. You know, you have to do some work, gather some data, evaluate it and present it in a way. And sometimes you also need to go beyond your comfort zone when doing certain things. But I think it's worth it. It worked for me. Yeah, I think it's a helpful piece of advice. Just integrate it into your workflow, make it part of your job. So I was talking about a career strategy quite a bit. So you can see the different parts of a career strategy here. It looks a little bit like the super linear process that you go through. Usually it's not, it's a little bit more messy, but this sort of linear process here sort of helps you to get started and to sort of figure out in a structured way, okay, what do I have to do? What are important steps for me? And we will today focus on the first step, which is the positioning. What am I good at and what do I want? But of course, doing this also touches upon what kind of message do you want to send? How can you be visible? What kind of visibility is important? How can you build a network? So it's all a little bit connected. It's not completely separate. Positioning. What am I good at? What's important to me? Some of you might have seen this model. It's not my model. It's quite a famous sort of career development model. Those are the 3 career circles, and you see these 3 questions. What am I good at? What's important to me? And where and how can I make a living? And you see that red sweet spot in the middle. So usually if all these things come together and you found an answer to all these things and they meet up, that's, you know, that's what you're aiming for. However, also don't stress about it. You know, usually the first job after academia or even in academia will not be your last job ever, right? So it's a continuous process. And also I often still ask myself these questions, even though, you know, I'm happy at my job, I have like stable working conditions, but it's still important to always, you know, question yourself and see, you know, how can I develop and what's important to me. So let's start right away with the first question. What am I good at? You might have heard of skills and also of strengths. And, you know, we often use these words interchangeably, but actually there's a bit of a difference. And I quite like this differentiation. So skills, you might know, you know, they're reproducible, they lead to a desired outcome. For instance, I manage or I collaborate in order to achieve X, Y, Z, right? Also important, they're transferable. So for instance, you are really good at collaborating with different academic actors or like, you know, scientific collaborators, partners worldwide, and maybe in a more businessy setting that would be called international stakeholder management, right? It's basically the same thing, but the wording might be a little bit different, right? So I think that's important for you to know. Often skills or strengths are also seen as like more characteristics of you, like you're analytical, you're resilient, you're team-oriented, stuff like that. That's also something, is like how you do what you do. So, and each of you has like a bunch of these skills, right? But not all of your skills are necessarily strengths. Because according to Marcus Buckingham, he's a psychologist, strengths are activities that strengthen you. That means a strength is something you might be good at and that you also enjoy doing, right? You sometimes maybe, I don't know, if you do research or, you know, you do a certain activity, you sort of feel in the flow, you feel you really enjoy doing that, you forget about time. It's something, you know, that you know, keeps you getting out of bed every morning. It's something you enjoy doing. And this is actually a strength. A strength can also be something that you're maybe not super skilled at, but you're very interested in learning more about. You know, there's potential because you're really interested in that. And ideally, you should move towards a direction where you utilize most of your strengths. You know, you might have jobs where you use a lot of your skills, but that doesn't make you happy necessarily. If you're, for instance, very good at editing papers and everyone is always asking you to edit someone else's paper, you're really good at it, but you actually loathe it, or it's kind of boring to you, even though you're good at it, then it's not necessarily a strength. It's a skill, right? And I quite like this differentiation, so you can sort of figure out, what do I really enjoy doing? What would I like to do more of? And also, what would I like to do less of? Now, before we start and getting a little bit more into, you know, how can you figure out what you're good at and what are like certain terminologies, you know, I ask you, I offer you to do this one little task with me. I give you like a minute or two. If you like, send a text message right now to 5 friends, colleagues, collaborators, people who know you, people who you trust. Maybe make a WhatsApp group or whatever, and say, I'm in this like talk right now, and you know, this workshop lady asked me to do that, so I'd be grateful if you texted me back what you think my greatest strengths are. And usually that's super nice, because you get quite nice feedback. Maybe it confirms what you already know. Maybe it confirms what you know, but in different wording. Or maybe you learn something new about yourself. And of course, you can return the favor, do that for them as well. But that's usually a really cool thing to do. So I encourage you to do that. I give you a few seconds. I take a sip of tea. And those of you who like to do that, just write that message, or also write it later. It's also great to do that and actually, you know, ask friends or, you know, people you trust or have a good relationship with. It's always super helpful to share that in order to shed some light on like blind spots you might have about your skills. Okay. They can also do that later, but we'll see maybe in the course of the workshop or the little talk, maybe at the end you can share some nice results. All right, transferable skills. No, maybe we go back like that. So before we do that, I'd be grateful if you just wrote in the chat what you think, what are skills of researchers. Doesn't have to be necessarily your skills, but just think about you as PhDs, postdocs, whatever. What do you think? What are your skills? What are you really good at? Just go ahead and like write it in the chat. Problem solving, exactly, very good. Yep. Analytical thinking, yep. Managing, exactly. With managing, what's interesting here, especially for PhDs and postdocs, is a great skill that you are able to lead and manage laterally. That means on the same level, because usually you're not in a position where you can tell people what to do. You have to sort of find a good way to collaborate with people and manage on eye level. And that's like a really great skill. And this is also something that you can prove that you're team oriented in a way, right? Or you sometimes maybe even have to lead bottom up, right? You want your boss to do something, or you know, steer him or her in a certain direction. So yeah, that's a great skill. But we have a lot, quite a few more here. Attention to details, yeah, very good. Good communicator, yeah, and that can mean a lot, right? Can mean in writing, in presenting, in chopping up very complex data and present it in a understandable way. Multitasking, yep, multitasking. Giving talks, yep. Talent to organize, yeah. Resilient, very important. And what comes with resilience is also that you're resilient when it comes to failure, right? Because it's the very nature of science that things don't work out. And you basically developed a structured way and a good sort of attitude towards, you know, things not working out and dealing productively with things not working out. That's a skill of scientists. So yeah, very good. Passion, yeah, passion for something. You're driven by it. You're motivated by something. Creativity, yeah, creative problem solving. Persistence, yeah. That's also a good one. Persistence, like not giving up too easily. Innovate, yeah. processing complex information, statistical analysis, data management, whatever comes with it, teamwork, mentoring. Mentoring is also a good one. You can sort of be a good team player, but also, guide others. Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing. That's already a good list, and I will maybe add a few ones. You've already named some of the skills that you see here on this slide. Let me see if I find anything that is new. Yeah, knowledge transfer, something like that. The methods that you can use in specific skills, in strategic skills, also prioritizing, developing projects, conceptualizing projects, designing concepts or proposals. Dealing productively with setbacks is what I said. Budgeting, fundraising. This is also something that, most of you can do. Managing yourself as well. Other than, I don't know, someone who hasn't done a PhD, they're maybe not as experienced in managing quite a big project on their own, because PhD is quite a big project. Leading people, building relationships, mentoring, teaching, discussing, thinking critically. Also important is that you can be critical with sources. So you have the ability to sort of figure out what is a reliable source, what not. And how can I evaluate that, right? This is also a skill specifically of PhDs or researchers. So this is a little bit of a first inspiration. What you can also do, and what I found helpful is take a work week, and write down, what am I doing? Like, what am I actually doing, right? And don't say like, oh, I'm writing an email. It's like, why are you writing this email? Is that in order to foster collaboration, or do you send a budgeting plan? Like, what are you actually doing? Are you writing a paper, whatever? And then after a week, you do have like a list of these things that you've done. And then you should mark those things that you really enjoy doing, because these are your strengths, or some of your strengths at least. You can also add stuff outside of your job. I don't know, maybe, you do some volunteer work or sports or whatever. Also add that, and then sort of check, what do I really enjoy doing, and what would I like to do more of or less of? Also quite nice is that most of the top 10 skills of 2025 that comes from the World Economic Forum are basically skills that researchers have, like analytical thinking, innovation, you named that, active learning strategies. This is also important, you're not afraid of learning and, developing, because that's also something you do all the time. Complex problem solving, critical thinking and analysis, you can read it, technology use, resilience, stress tolerance. So actually you're really well equipped for the future. I would also like to show you a few inspirations on where you can also find ideas for skills, and also how to name these skills. Often you know that you can do something, but then, for instance, for certain aspects, for academia or for non-academic jobs, you have to, use different wordings. And maybe some of you know that. That's called My IDP Science Careers. It's a free resource by the universities or the organizations that you see on the right. And you can create an account, it's free, and then answer a few questions. And then what comes out of that, what's really helpful is that it translates certain skills of PhDs and postdocs into different wording, for instance, for industry, right? So I wrote a 40,000 word dissertation. That's the ability to present and organize large amounts of information articulately. Fluency in Microsoft Office, for example. What else? What is also nice? I completed my PhD project in 3 years. Ability to plan a project and deliver it to agreed timelines, right? And so you see that what you think is sort of normal, or what you might think is maybe not seen useful in industry or certain other areas, there are a bunch of skills that you acquired through that, especially also when you want to keep on going in academia, because more and more of your time will be spent by managing rather than doing the actual science, right? As a young PI, or when you have your own research group or whatever, there will be a lot more leadership and managing and so on that will happen to you. So also make sure that you also communicate that mentoring, teamwork when you, for instance, apply for a research group or something like that, or next career step in academia. Another inspiration, what else do we have? So what I like to do is just, especially not only, but if you want to go to another sector, is to just check job ads. Job ads that you're interested in. You can also do that for research career. And what I found very helpful is LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is a huge data set, huge data pool, and a pool, and it's more and more used also by academic institutions, and there are more and more also positions in academia, but also in other sectors. So this is just like one example. Like I typed in postdoc in Germany and checked what it spits out, and you find a bunch of jobs. And then just check, okay, in the job description, what are the requirements? What kind of wording are they using in your specific field? Or what kind of wording are they using, like for an industry position or a position in the nonprofit sector or elsewhere, right? Sort of look at it and see, can I do that? Probably, but they use a different wording here. And then, a lady I was talking to the other day who transitioned from a PhD to industry, she said she had like a spreadsheet where she sort of listed all the skills that she also found in job ads that she sort of found interesting, in order to sort of be able to communicate them. For instance, then in a job talk, or when you write a cover letter or resume. Twitter is a great resource, because you also find job ads there, not only on LinkedIn or like those typical job ad platforms. So some of you might also be on Twitter. Has someone, or maybe we can make a quick little poll, who is on LinkedIn? Can you just raise your hand? That would be cool. Okay, quite a few. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. So I think it's a helpful resource, especially if you wanna transition to another sector. Twitter is very useful also when you want to stay in academia, because you can like follow labs or other scientists and researchers, and probably some of you are already on Twitter and are using that, or at least following people. So that's a good resource for also figuring out jobs or skills. And of course, on LinkedIn, what I also found helpful is when you look at profiles of people who are maybe in your sector, or who have already transitioned to a certain other job or to another sector. For instance, Helena, she's actually also in New York. She has a really nice LinkedIn summary where she presents her skills. So she says she has 10 plus years of research experience, passionate about solving problems and finding novel solutions to develop cancer therapeutics, thriving in a collaborative work environment, and always interested in further developing my own as well as other people's skill sets. And now experience in designing and executing complex research projects, managing logistics, and working in multidisciplinary teams, right? That's very nicely put together. If you want to transition, Christina, she's a medical liaison at Janssen. It's a big pharmaceutical company. She also uses quantifiers for presenting her skills. So she has 10 years of experience, 23 peer-reviewed publications, right? strong project management and leadership skills as evidenced, also important. Yeah, also don't just claim something, also show some evidence. And by the supervision of 17 junior researchers and strategic planning of successful collaborations, resulting in 11 poster presentations at scientific conferences. For instance, this is how you can also present your skills in a good way, and also sort of get inspiration of how you could go about that. And another and last idea for how to figure out your skills is through informational interviews. I think since you're all in the States, you're probably familiar with the concept. Just a brief summary: informational interviews are means in order to figure out or get information from people who are already in a certain position that you might be interested in, and just learn more about a position, a job title, or sort of like other information that you can't otherwise get. This is an example by Mariana, and she basically here showed how this works on LinkedIn. She was interested in pharma consulting and asked someone to meet. And in her talk, she also mentioned that it was very helpful for her to talk to these people who are already in a certain industry, because she could then ask them as well, what are the skill sets that you are using on a daily basis? How would you frame that? With my skill set in XYZ, would you also, focus on that or strengthen that? How should I go about, rephrasing it? And that is something that people who already in the area that you want to go can, of course, help you with, and also get or give you some inspiration of, how to transfer at least the naming of your skill sets and what's important. Another great option that I would like to introduce to you, and I encourage you to try peer groups, with friends or colleagues. It's the so-called PAR task or whatever, exercise, I would say. But before I go about it, I'm not really sure if some of you still have their hands raised because of the LinkedIn question, or if you actually do have a question. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so if you have a question, just like start talking. That's totally fine with me. So the PARs are a great way because they're using storytelling to figure out your skills, but also to communicate your skills. So PAR stands for problem, action, result, basically. And it means that you describe a problem, and the more dramatic, the better. I will give you an example in a second. Then you sort of describe what you've done or initiated and what the results are. And first of all, this is really great. If you do that in small peer groups, then people can listen to your story and sort of give you feedback on what kind of skills they think you have from the story that you've just told, right? And this is also a great way to answer questions in job interviews, because people will never ask you for your strengths and skills. That's kind of old school, but they will ask you, so can you please tell me about a situation in which you have encountered a problem or something like that, right? And then you want to have a good answer and also stress certain skills for a job. And you can do that by using the sort of structure, because it's always like a good outcome. Yeah? I'll show you quickly an example for that. This is a real life example from a PhD student. So she was working in a collaborative research project with 3 partners. Her thesis was dependent on that, but then one partner sort of left the project, was a problem for her, couldn't go on with her work. Problem. Right? Dramatic problem. Okay. What did she do? So she informed the project partners, talked to her supervisor, identified the most important urgent measurements she needed to continue with her work, contacted 3 other institutes asking if they wanted to take part in the project. And then she indeed found, as a result, a new cooperation partners. With one of them, she even did another project, and she learned a new method since the measurements, some of the measurements she had to do on her own. Okay, very quick story, not a lot of information. You can tell it in like 30 seconds. So what do you think? What kind of skills can you sort of identify from this very brief little stories? And try to be as specific as you can, like, yeah, managing or communication, I see that, but try to be specific. What does it actually mean? And please feel free to write in the chat what you think the skills are here. Proactive, yeah, very, very important. Initiative, crisis management, yeah. Very good. Problem solving, coordination also, yeah. Never give up, yeah. Networking, taking responsibility, yeah, I like that. That's a good one, yeah. Learning, yeah. Resilience, yeah. Maybe some more, 1, 2 more. Yeah, communication. Yeah, new learning, writing skills, yeah. Yeah, there are a few good ones. And of course, let's check it out. I also was thinking about that a little bit. And you named some of them. Of course, you analyze and find solutions, design a new project plan, tap into resources, also know where you can get help, know your sources, know your resources, adapt to new situations quickly. I think this is something that you can all do very well. High level of adaptability. Communicate clearly, say, this is the problem, this is what I need you to do. Present to and collaborate with different stakeholders, right? Different institutes. I don't know what they were exactly, but yeah, collaborate with different stakeholders, build relationships, prioritize. What's most important? What do I have to do now? Manage time, and also the willingness to learn. So you see from this very brief little story, you can already sort of figure out quite a few skills. You can do that in little peer groups, super helpful. And you can also showcase your skills when asked in an interview, for instance. So it's always good to have some of these stories handy, thinking about these stories, like if something happens to you or you just remember from the past what has happened, write down some ideas for these stories. They're super handy for explaining or illustrating your skills. Then just a very quick view on these other 2 circles. What is important to me and where and how can I make a living? So what's important to me is about values, right? So values are things that are important to you, the characteristics and behaviors that motivate you and guide your decisions. They should determine your priorities and are part of everything you do and should be the driving force. And if you don't live, in balance with your values, you probably are unhappy. Important values that we often hear from researchers are those you can read on the slide. But this is a very individual thing, and there's no good or bad. Like, there are no good or bad values. If you want to make money, and this is a driver, that's not a bad value, right? It's just a very individual thing. But I think it's important to think about what is really important to you, because that helps you to make decisions. Makes a decision for the kind of work environment you want to work in the future, what kind of people you want to work with, what is important, like how can you manage, your own well-being and your family, what does your partner maybe want, how does it fit together, within the next years, what do you want to do more of or less of? I think knowing that is really important, and also in order to make good decisions and also to figure out what you actually want to do. And there are a few questions that might be helpful for you to figure out, what's important to you and come a little closer to your values. So number 1 is, what would you like people to say about you when you are not present? right? That's always a good one. I always remember the story from Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn when they were attending their own funeral, and they were very touched about what were people saying about them. And this is something like that. What would you like people to say about you when you're not there? What would you do if you had a guarantee for success? That doesn't mean that you have to do that thing. If that would mean I would open a cafe in France, you probably would not do that. But what are sort of the certain features that are intriguing to you? Why would you like to do that? What's the driving force here? And what is non-negotiable? For some people, that's family. For other people, it's self-determination. Really depends. But where do you don't want to make compromises? And the fourth and also helpful one is what's the opposite of what really triggers you? Sometimes people really annoy you doing something. And usually the opposite of that is something that is important to you. For instance, with workmates, with, work environment. So this is definitely something that you should think about. And then finally, where and how can I make a living? That's a big question. And again, I told you academia is the alternative career path. So don't be afraid. There's a lot out of there, also out of academia. But if you want to stay in academia, for sure, that's totally great choice. Just be informed about it. Those, roughly 75% or 85% that are non-academic, you can see that, for instance, the business sector or the nonprofit sector or the public sector are actually very diverse. So when we say, oh, I want to go to industry, it basically can mean you work in industry like in a big company. It can mean you work in a small or medium-sized company, or at a publishing house, or at a startup, or you're self-employed, or you work at a consulting firm. And that doesn't mean like Boston Consulting Group or McKinsey. It can also mean very small and specialized consultancies that are, focused on, sustainability or the public sector or whatever, pharma consulting. And also the nonprofit sector is quite diverse, and there might be interesting jobs for you, where you can utilize all the skills that you have as PhDs or postdocs. They're all needed. You just have to sell them in a way and translate them in a way that people in these areas understand them. And this is why it's helpful to talk to them and get inspiration, for instance, through job ads. Yeah, and then of course, we can also talk about a bit more if you have questions concerning your, that message, or how you convey what's important to you to others, visibility questions, networking questions. And with application, I'm not so strong in when you want to apply within the US. I can help you with applying in Germany, but I think in general, I'm open to questions of all kinds. And for more lasting resources and ideas, is I think it's super important to have peer groups and have a little bit of a peer-to-peer exchange. And I think what you're doing right now, Esther and Laurie, I think that's really great, because it also encourages, people to share information and share their experiences, be open about it, try to talk to people about what you want to do, try to get feedback, ask for a career development talk with your boss. I think that's always important. Set goals, be specific. As I said before, make figuring out your strengths and skills and parts of your career strategy, see that as part of your job. Set certain goals when you want to do what, because if you start early, you don't have to do a lot once, you finished your PhD, or, you decide you want to do something else, or you have to apply for the next step. And there are a few resources at the end here. For self-reflection, there are a few free tests that are kind of interesting. I mean, they're not like, the definite answer to your personality, but it's fun to just also figure out how they frame certain skill sets and, what they name them. There are a few books that are helpful when it comes to career strategy, and 2 links with an overview of the career development topic. Okay. And that's basically it. That's a first overview over strengths and skills. And I'm super happy and curious about your questions, but also about maybe experiences you have or recommendations or ideas that you would like to share that worked well for you when it comes to figure out your skills.
Thank you, Anne. That was such a treasure trove of resources and information, lots to think about, particularly like the idea of writing down everything you do in a week and translating that to, well, what skills does that actually encapsulate? So I'm going to invoke the rights of asking the first question. But if you have questions, please either raise your hand or put them in the chat. We've got 10 minutes now, and I believe that Anne can also stay on a few minutes extra. So first question that I have is, do you think that companies genuinely value the skills that you acquire during your PhD, and particularly in those first years of your postdoc as well? Do you think that PhDs and postdocs should really expect to go in to companies really at the lowest level, or can those skills, are they truly valued as sort of experience that you can go in at higher levels?
Well, first of all, it really depends on what kind of business that is, if they have already, experience with PhDs or not. But I think it's all about the story. It's all about how you sell that, how you communicate that what you've learned during a PhD and a postdoc is valuable for a job. Tell them how you, with your skills, can solve their problem. Right? It's not so much about, am I a PhD or am I a chemist or sociologist? No, am I the person with a skill set that solves your problem? And when you can communicate that through also, little stories from your PhD experience, I think then you can convince people that you can do the job. And this is all they want to know in a way. This is how I would go about it. Tell a good story, tell them how you can be the solution to their problem.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Rupert Holzel's asking if the slides will be made available. Is this something?
Sure. Yeah, sure. I can send them to you and then you just distribute them.
Great. And we have a question from Michael Marchetti, if you'd like to unmute yourself, Michael.
Yes, thank you. I think you answered already my question. It's that if you can use this theory of transferable skills also in a non-academic context, would that be possible for every profession?
What do you mean specifically? Like, do you mean like also other sectors? Like, I don't know.
Like for example, pilots who are losing their jobs now. Could you do that also for pilots? Would that work as well?
Sure.
Or flight attendants, or?
I would say yes, because it's all about the story, right? What is a transferable skill of a pilot? You can work under stress. You have technical skills, you can concentrate, you have to have good communication skills, right? And if you sort of connect that to, like, let's say a job in another field and say sort of, you need someone who is doing that. And with the skill I have, I can help you, do that kind of job. I think it's more about building a bridge between what people want. Like, I don't know, if I have an open position, I want to make sure this person can do the job, right? And solve the problem that I have by this open position. And if this person can sort of convince me and tell me intriguingly that, with what they've done before, no matter what that is, they are capable of helping me solving that problem, I think it's possible. I mean, sometimes it's a little bit harder building that bridge, depending on what it is. But I think in general, it should be possible. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for your question, Michael.
We have another question in the chat from Nimi. Hi, Nimi. If you find yourself matching to a couple of skill sets that you would enjoy doing, how do you decide which to pursue and which to go for?
Mm-hmm. it's a little bit trying out, you know. Of course you can't try out different jobs, but you can, like, let's say you talk to people who are in maybe an area that matches one skill set. Like, let's say the classic thing is academia or something else, right? So talk to a young PI or a young professor and ask them, what does your daily life look like? What's important? What did you expect? What didn't you expect? What kind of skills are you using right now that you learned in your PhD? What kind of new skills do you need? And if you say, well, but maybe, I don't know, UX design at a company might be also interesting, and I do have some skills for that, talk to someone who's a UX designer in a company and ask them. So you can also get a little bit of feel for, you know, it's not just about your skills, it's also a life choice, or you know, the context in which you're using these skills. So I'm using quite a few skills that I also used in my PhD, but it's a completely different context and work environment, right? So I think it's more about what is important to you and trying to figure out, you know, what's important. And there's actually quite a good exercise that I like. So first, you need to gather a lot of information, you know, talk to people, maybe try out some things, feed your brain, and then flip a coin. And you don't even look at what the result of flipping the coin is. But while the coin is in the air, you do have a little tendency and say, oh, I wish it was, you know, heads. And this is usually like a nice little trick to make decisions, but you have to feed your brain before that. Try to get as much information for the one side or the other side.
So next we have a question from Fabio, if you want to unmute yourself and ask.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I have a question about CVs in Germany. Like, is there a way to, do you guys have a platforms or something like that where you can tailor your CV to adapt it to the German market? Because I know that many pharma companies use this automatized system to find candidates, and if you don't have the right keywords, then it's basically you never get an interview.
Yeah, there's certain specifics. They're pretty similar to also other countries or other CVs, but you can just get in touch and we can schedule like a first free consultation, and then, you know, I can give you some advice. We do have some resources also on our website. I think some of them are in German, but feel free, Fabio, to reach out, and yeah, we can look at your case in more depth.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
And then just following on from that, we'll come back to Rachel's question in just a moment, but Sarah asks, I'm building my CV and I have trouble changing my academic language to industry. Where can I find a dictionary of synonyms or something similar?
I'm not aware of that. I wonder if that exists. It's actually a good question. So if anyone knows about that, that's helpful. Try out this My IDP resource that I was showing, and also look at job ads. When you're looking at these jobs, look what the job requirements are. Like, how do they phrase that? And that is usually the industry language. Go on the websites of the companies you're interested in. And that usually helps to find the specific language of the specific field or area as well. And talk to people, yeah. Ask them, how would you phrase that?
And then we have a question from Rachel, and she says, when it comes to a resume, there is a limited space to list our transferable skills. Is there a way to properly rank our skills? Or would it be best to list skills on a resume that are relevant to the employer, even if those skills are not necessarily our best skills?
Yeah, so I would definitely go with what is important to the employer. Usually in a job ad, the importance of the skills are ranked. So number 1, 2, 3, right? Those are the most important ones. The other ones are kind of like nice to have. So focus on the skills that are really important, but also list something that you think might be helpful in this for this employer, something that they maybe haven't stated, but that you can also bring to the table. But I would always tailor my documents to a specific job or employer. On your LinkedIn profile, you can be a little bit, broader. But again, also figure out, is the employer, or is the job that is listed something that I would really enjoy doing? But that's the question. Yeah, rank your skills and focus on the employer. But also think about, would I then still like to do the job?
That's great. Okay, so I think that is all. If there are no more questions, then we'll finish right on time. And so thank you so much for all of your words of wisdom. Thank you to all of you for attending. If you want to add Anne or Laurie or myself on LinkedIn, reach out to us, find out more about INET, find out more about Anne's work, then please do so. And thank you and have a good afternoon.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. All the best.
Thank you.